And welcome to episode 38 of Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. Yeah, just before Christmas, all lovely and festive. So, yes, tonight then, what we're going to be looking at, let me just flick back and minimize that. So, yeah, a few things. Going to be talking a little bit about giving a few tips and tricks on photography for Christmas or midwinter celebration or Hanukkah or any other kind of festival you want. And if you're not celebrating anything just at the moment, maybe when the next celebration comes along, you can use the same bits of advice. Also, I'm going to be talking about mince pies and photographing them. And if you've got no idea what mince pies are, well, I suppose I'd probably better say a little bit about that as well. However, anybody in Britain will know exactly what mince pies are and their relationship to Christmas. And then after that, we're going to be looking at the couple of submissions for people looking for feedback, critique. Robert put in this photo, which he's done a fair bit of editing to and playing around with. There's a particular style he's trying for and he's looking for a few bits of advice on that. And then Lucas took this rather lovely photo of his son in a style known as high key, but he's wanting to know a bit more about high key photography. So we'll talk about that. And then I'll also, at the end of it, tell you what I'm planning for next week as well. So do stick around. So that's kind of where we're at for the moment. So this is Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. We're live now on Facebook. Leave a comment. Let me know where you're from. Say hi. Yeah, it's always good to know where everybody's listening in or watching in from. And if you have any questions, comments as we go, put them in the comments. I do check in quite frequently. I don't keep them permanently on because I tend to get a bit too distracted, but I do keep revisiting. So throughout the course of the evening, I'll be checking in on the comments. I say evening, it is evening here in the UK. It's not exactly evening everywhere. I mean, I see, let's see, just a quick look here. Stacey, hi Stacey, glad you could make it, is calling from Hatboro in Pennsylvania, USA. She says, the snow here is slowly melting. Yes, we had snow. All right, okay, cool. So definitely get into the Christmas spirit there. By contrast, VG says evening all. Hi VG. VG is in India, in southern India, where I don't think you ever get snow, do you? I think you're about cold as it gets is still about sort of 25 to 28 degrees. So, and that's, whereas Stacey is sort of in the middle of the afternoon and VG is at about 2 o'clock in the morning. So, then we've got Brian. Brian says, hello everyone, good to be here again. Hi Brian, glad you can make it. Brian's much closer to home, it's kind of more in Dumfries, which is about 20 miles along the road from where I am. I think you're Dumfries, Brian, aren't you? Give or take a bit. Although do correct me if I'm wrong. Thian, hello from Florida. Oh, glad you could make it along, Thian. I don't suppose it's snowing in Florida either. Ursula. Ursula, hello everyone. Glad you could make it. Now, Ursula's in British Columbia, but I'm not sure which bit of BC you're in. Is that north enough or into the Rockies enough to be getting the snow where you are? Do let me know. Thian says, love mince pies. Good stuff, yep. So does Stacey. Lucas is coming with a good evening. Good evening, Lucas. Glad you're here. Maya, good evening. Says good evening. Welcome, Maya. Maya's from Jerusalem. Now, part of the mince pie shoot did actually come out, or the idea for doing the mince pie shoot kind of came out from the Latka photos that you were working on a few weeks ago. So hopefully I'll have a few tips for you with that. Rosie, good evening, everyone. Hi, Rosie. Glad you can make it. Rosie's in Whithorn, which is again about 50 miles from here, so it is evening there. Thian, yeah, 2:34 Eastern Standard Time in Florida. Kylie, hi Kylie, glad you could make it. Hi everyone, I'm from South Wales in the UK. Okay, so you're on the same time zone, but a few hundred miles south from here. Oh, great. Robert's here with Anne. Howdy from Texas. Glad you could make it along. Yes, Brian is in Dumfries. And Becca, evening everyone from Norwich, which is down in the sort of southeast of England. Not fully south, but kind of eastish of England. So that's great. That's a great start. Good to have I know it's always a relief when I know I'm just not sort of sitting here on my own. Whenever I start these podcasts, I start them and then the chat thing is completely empty, and I nag my wife just to write hello or something, just so that I know that the chat is actually working. Because anybody who's stuck around for a long time might remember there was a point a few months ago where I couldn't see any chat, or I could only see the most recent 4, and it freaked me out completely. So I've tended to be a bit paranoid about it ever since. So it's always lovely to get the comments in. Ursula says, yes, we just had a big snowstorm and our hydro is down since last night. No electricity. Oh dear. So my battery on my iPad may run out. Ooh, oh dear. Well, I hope it lasts. Hope you get your heating back, Ursula. Anything you missed, you can of course catch up on YouTube as well. youtube.com/Kim Ayres will take you to the YouTube channel. I record these, and on Wednesday, usually by mid-afternoon, they're up on YouTube. So you can go there and actually check out the previous 37 episodes if you want. If you find any of this really useful, by the way, and would like to contribute, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is the place to do it. It's not compulsory, but it is always appreciated. Right, okay, so let's make a little start. Now, excuse me. Last week, I thought I had a great idea. I thought, right, coming up to the Christmas Day, one of the problems that I know everybody has every year, I always used to have, kind of still do, or it can happen, is trying to get some nice photos on the day itself, and it always appears pretty elusive. So I thought, well, okay, let's give some tips, tricks, and advice on doing that. And I actually spent a fair chunk of time writing out great long lists of how to do this, how to do that, how to do the other, and I was making up slides and stuff, and the problem is I've just sort of seemed to have ended up with way too much information, and I could spend quite easily the entire evening just on this. The problem is I don't really have a nice batch of working photos, of good Christmas Day photos to show you. I mean, the best, nicest photo I've got, my kind of favourite, always comes around, is this one, which is our fairy on our Christmas tree, which was made by our daughter Meg when she was in primary school, probably about somewhere between about sort of 7 or 8 years old, something like that, I think. And it takes pride of place on our tree every year, and there's just something beautiful about it. Well, there is beautiful. Whether it's beautiful to anybody else, I have no idea, but it doesn't matter. It's absolutely beautiful to me. I look at it and it just makes my heart melt, and that's probably because I know my daughter made it. Now, my daughter also now happens to be coming up to 23 years old in February. Doesn't matter. I see that, and I remember the little baby girl, well, infant, young girl. who made the fairy, and I love the way it always just catches the light. So you can do that notion of photography of zoom in, close up, Christmas baubles, decorations. I think was it last week or the week before, a couple of weeks ago, we sort of lighting a candle. I think we were talking about celebration photography. We did a bit of that. So you can kind of zoom in and you can do this, or you can kind of come out wide and you can get wide angle shots, allow you to do the scene. You can get people in, you can get the room in, you can get the tree, and you can get the TV, and you can get the fireplace if you have any of these things. Or you can have people interacting, whereas sort of zoomed in close-up shot is really good for the details. And then there's all the stuff about the camera settings. And the thing is by and large, the main thing about camera settings you've got to understand is you're in low light conditions. And low light conditions mean that if you're on auto settings of any kind, your camera will slow down the shutter speed. And if it does that, then the slightest wobble of your hand and the thing becomes blurred. And this is why we all end up with horrifically blurred photos at Christmas, because we're not in bright sunlight, unless you're down in the southern hemisphere. This is point actually Jackie from South Africa, or Katie in Australia, and a few others in the southern hemisphere. Of course, you are in bright sunlight over Christmas. But for those of us in the northern hemisphere, it tends to be dull, it tends to be dark. So your auto settings will put you on a slow shutter speed, but that slow shutter speed runs the risk of everything becoming blurry. So your prime objective here is to try and keep the camera as still as possible. And to do that, there's a number of things you can do. First of all, if you have the possibility, use a tripod or rest the camera on something. Don't try and hold it all by hand. Last week, I talked about the idea of bean bags. You know, this is a set that was bought quite cheaply. It's got camouflage on, quite not exactly festive. I'm sure you could make your own. Maggie talked about, these have got the little polystyrene balls in them, which are probably not particularly environmental friendly. Maggie says, you make your own with lentils, what have you, will do it work just as well. The point is about a beanbag is that the weight of the camera sits on it and it sort of adjusts itself, whether it's around the arm of a chair or whether it's on a stone wall outside. If you don't have a tripod or it's too much to carry around, then actually a beanbag is a really handy little option for keeping your camera still. The other thing is if you're at a state, is to use the strap. I think I've talked before about this, but pull the strap hard against your neck, and if you're kind of really stretching it and pushing against the camera, now you might have to use the viewfinder in the back rather than looking through the eyepiece, but depending on the setup you've got, then you can kind of steady the camera, but it gives you an extra stop or two's leeway just by kind of pulling hard against your neck. You're essentially allowing your body to be a bit more of a tripod. Will help a bit. In really low light though, you will need to keep the camera steady either on a tripod or a beanbag. The problem is with slow shutter speed as well, even if you've got it steady, it means if people are doing things like opening presents or raising glasses or cheering or whatever, then they tend to end up a bit blurred as well. So there's all this kind of stuff. There's the aperture, there's the ISO, there's the shutter speed. In the end, I thought probably the best thing for me to do here is give you a priority list. The order of priority. Now, I don't know whether you can see this. I hope you maybe can. Let's just do this here. Order of priority. Because we're photographers, or we're trying to become photographers, or photography is our obsession. We are always trying to get the best picture, and absolutely, that's what we're out to do. But one of the things we've discussed a few times now is actually something like Christmas celebrations, a time when maybe the family are together, or the first priority is capture the emotion. I mean, unless you are trying to create a photo which is going to be a competition winner. Now, we'd all like that, but most of us, in the heat of the moment of children running about or parents tripping over things or whatever else, we don't always have the time to line everything up and set it up exactly how we would like it. I mean, creating a tableau for Christmas out of, and getting everybody to stage a part can also be a huge amount of fun. But if we're talking about that kind of documentary, catch your family at Christmas, then you've just got to kind of be quick off the mark. And the first bit you're trying to do is capture the emotion, capture the story, capture the feel, capture the delight of the face as the present is being opened. Capture somebody falling asleep in their chair and snoozing with a, I mean, it's maybe not particularly flattering, but if somebody's got a Christmas hat on and glass of sherry in their hand which is about to pour out, or things being passed over to each other, or food being prepared, or being eaten, or full plates being pushed to one side and people feeling stuffed, or that notion of action, interaction. But you want to capture the story, you want to capture the emotion. That's the first bit. Pretty much everything comes second, because you can have the lighting, you can have the camera settings, you can do everything else, but if you don't get the emotion of you don't really have a photo. So first of all, that's your primary aim. Now, running with that, try and get it in focus. It might sound obvious, but again, the problem is quite often we are working on autofocus. I tend to work on autofocus a lot more than manual focus, quite simply because I don't fully trust my eyes to be able to get it exactly where I want. But the autofocus, you think you focused it on somebody and they move, and then you click and suddenly it's focused on the wall behind them. So your primary objective, once you're realising you're capturing the emotion, getting the story, is to get it in focus. Because again, if it's not in focus, you probably haven't got a photo. There are exceptions where an out of focus photo can still have something to it, but it's rare. Try and get it in focus. The next thing to really remember is the background. We get so often caught in trying to photograph the person or the subject that we forget what's going on in the background. And actually, you might have quite a nice photo that is ruined by a TV screen with something on it, which, a prime minister talking or something. And you've lost the moment. You've got a distraction. So if you have the time, try and move around a little bit. Think about if you're getting to a point whereby somebody's going to open a present, can you move around the room a little bit and just think what's actually behind them? Is it better if there's a fireplace? Is it better if there's a blank wall? Is it better if there's a Christmas tree or something else? And what doesn't make, actually having them next to the bin or the TV or something just doesn't look quite as good. Lighting is always difficult. If you have the time, you try and get the lighting. If it's just an awkward overhead light, it's maybe not quite so good, but sometimes little twinkly lights from the Christmas tree or candles or anything else like that can look rather good. Then at that point, only then start worrying about your composition, like have I got it rule of thirds, am I using diagonals, leading lines, or any of the other things that we've talked about and I will talk about again in terms of composition. And then finally, your last priority of the lot is your ISO. Basically, the problem that you have is, again, in low light, your camera auto settings will go to a very high ISO, and that will make everything noisy and grainy. Such that if you blow it up large, it's all very sort of dotted, coloured, spotted. It doesn't look brilliant. However, given the fact that 99% of the photos you take are likely only ever to be seen on a computer screen or a phone or a tablet, you don't have to worry about blowing these up to A2 size. Your priority here is to capture the emotion of the images and then be able to share it with your friends and family on social media. So don't worry about the ISO. I would say put the ISO, if you've got some kind of manual control over your device, put the ISO settings on auto, allow it to max out if it gives you a bit more control over your shutter speed and a bit more control over your aperture. So that's really what I would say is, I'm gonna move on to the mince pies in a minute, but if you have questions, if you don't feel that, if there's something specific you want, put it in the comments. Put it in. I will check in on the comments and I will try and answer your question. So think about any questions. If there's something that you've got the day coming up, the celebration, whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah, or midwinter, whatever. Or even Hogmanay, New Year's Eve in just over a week. Let me know. Tell me if you've got a particular concern that you're worried about. Stick it in the questions, and I'll into the comments rather, and I'll see if I can sort that out for you, or give you a couple of pointers. But I primarily just kind of think your order of priorities. First of all, get the story. You can kind of crop things in afterwards in your editing thing, but if you miss the emotion of it, you don't really have a photo. So that's everything else kind of follows on from that. So hope you find that useful. Right, let's flip back, see if we have oh yeah, we've got a couple more comments here. Where are we? So yeah, oh, Maya says, glad our picture was interesting for you. Yep, you're going to find this one out in a few minutes, Maya. Then we've got Ursula says, oh, Ursula's got a wood stove. We have heat. Oh, well, that's a relief. Might not have power, but if you've got a stove, yeah, one way or another you can cope with it. Rather cozy too, if you can take your head away from worrying about the fact that how long you might be without power. At least it's nice to be able to enjoy the coziness of a wood stove. Pat says, made it. Oh, Pat, you're back. Brilliant. So good. So glad you could make it along. Lost an act. Nice to see you again. Yeah, good to see you too, Pat. Thank you. Pat loves Meg's Fairy. Beautiful. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's irresistible, really, isn't it? Yeah, Stacey's recognising the fatherly pride all dads do. Oh, and Stacey's birthday's in February too. Okay, well, once we get closer to it, I'm sure I'll end up mentioning Meg's birthday again, because she's actually a Valentine's girl. She was born just a few minutes after midnight. A few minutes earlier, and she would have been a Friday the 13th baby. She just got past the midnight and into Valentine's Day. Oh, VG says she remembers reading about Meg's Fairy. Yeah, I've talked about it on my blog. Meg's Fairy tends to make an appearance pretty much every year, or most years. And Rosie's just eaten her mince pie, right? Yep. 'Tis the season for them, for sure. Right, okay. So, what are we going to talk about? So, yes, mince pies. So, to go back a little bit, a few weeks ago, Maya put in a couple of photos of latke, and she'd been sprinkling them with icing sugar and doing a kind of still life food product photography kind of thing. And we talked, I gave her some advice, bits and pieces, and then we were sort of coming up to Christmas, and I suddenly thought, yeah, mince pies with icing sugar falling down. It's all very well giving the advice. How easy is it to actually do? I mean, as you know, I'm a portrait photographer first and foremost, rather than a product photographer. But I do have the knowledge, I have the understanding of it, but I've maybe not put it into practice quite so much. So I thought, well, okay, here's an opportunity. Let's actually have a go at trying to do some festive mince pie photographs. Now, a mince pie is basically, it's a little small pastry pie with mincemeat. And mincemeat isn't meat, it's mixed fruit, mixed dried fruit, sultanas, raisins. There's all sorts of different things, you know, maybe bits of orange peel or little chunks of apple. And different spices and bits and pieces. So it's very rich, it's very tasty, and traditionally, certainly in the UK, like I say, it comes in a little pastry case, and it's very, very associated with Christmas. And for children everywhere, when they're hanging up their stockings, they, you know, on Christmas Eve, they'll stick a mince pie out, maybe a glass of milk or a shot of something stronger for Santa, and a carrot maybe for Rudolph the reindeer pulling Santa's sleigh. So there is something very seasonal about the mince pie. And then if you're using icing sugar, like the pictures that Maya was doing last time, there is that sort of sense that it has that snow look to it. So what I thought I would do is to try and do it. And we thought, well, okay, let's try 2 or 3 different versions of a mince pie photo to see, you'll try and get a couple of different feels. How could you do it and create a slightly different feel? So the first idea I had in mind was I wanted to do something where I would use a wide aperture to create a bit of bokeh and then have Christmas lights in the background. So that was the plan. So what we did, let's flick over. So what I will do here, let's show you the setup of what I did. So as you can see, this is our table in the kitchen, got mince pie sitting there, got my camera on a tripod. I've got a little trigger on there which is triggering 2 off-camera flashes. I've got one in a softbox over on the left here, and one sitting on here where I'm bouncing the light, just a couple of little things to bounce it from. Can't remember. I did try pointing the flash at it directly, but the light was too hard on the edge of the pies. Didn't like it. And then I've got a tangle of Christmas lights sitting on the table behind. So the soft box, you can't quite see it from this angle. It's about 1 meter to 1.20 centimeters long, and it's about, I think it's 40 to 60 centimeters wide, maybe about 60 centimeters wide. And there, but what that does is there's a kind of narrow strip of it, and it allowed me to to have the light coming down onto the mince pies, but not to be reflecting back out onto the wall behind it. And the other thing, yes, that I've got here is this is actually a reflector, but the back of the reflector has a black area to it. So I just slotted that down behind the table so that I had an indistinct black background, because I wanted this to just kind of have a low light Christmassy feel to it. So what happens then? This is a first shot. We've got a little round slate placemat, and this is in ambient light, where I've got it on 25th of a second, f2. No, hold on, that's the wrong one. Oh no, oh yeah, sorry, f3.5, 125th of a second, but it's at ISO 6400. So, you know, removing, it's very noisy in the background here. So that was just sort of a quick sort of first shot to sort of see what would happen. And then I thought, well, okay, you can't do an ISO of 6400, so I put the ISO on 100, 125th of a second. Now, f6.3 gives me a bit more depth. I'm just trying to sort of see what's happening. I've got the light coming from the softbox. Not wanting that f.6 because in here you can see all the the lights and wires in the background, and I didn't really want that, so I sort of had to adjust the thing around, but also I wanted to narrow the depth. I wanted it to sort of disappear out into the blur, and to do that I needed the wide aperture, so I went to an aperture of 3.2 at this point for this. And as you can see now, we've got, you know, sort of focused just on the front here. You can start to see the little crystals in the flower there, and the background starting to blur out a bit more. I then realised I wasn't overly happy with the little white lights. We dug around, we found another bigger set where we had lots of coloured lights, and actually just before I get to the coloured lights was the fact that at the moment I'm just using one light, and then I had a second light. This is where I then put up the second light. Now the first one, you can see that the light is just a bit too harsh. In fact, it's throwing a shadow over on the left there, which I kind of didn't want. So that's when I then allowed it to bounce rather than go directly. So then I've got a softer light now, got the bounce light, and I've changed the lights in the background. So now we're at a point whereby we're going, okay, this is starting to get the kind of look that I want. And here you can see underneath, you can start to see the mincemeat coming out of the top of the pie. It's catching the light. It is sweet and luscious. But we've got lots of lovely colours in the background. So now feeling like, right, we're in the kind of right place. I'm going to be doing more than one pie. So we decided, Maggie's made 6, but we probably want to have, so I stick 3 down, stick 1 on top, and you go, yeah, that's okay, but not really happy with the arrangement. So we then sort of move around, swap the arrangement about, come back in, start thinking, maybe there's something there, but actually, not fully kind of there. And then we remembered Maggie had actually made, she'd had some leftover pastry, and she had a reindeer cookie cutter. So she made a little reindeer, which you can see in the background here. So should we have the reindeer coming into it? Looked a little bit lost in the back, pulled it round to the front. Of course, you weren't on the top side of the pastry there, on the other side, and somehow it looked a little bit more like a unicorn and didn't really look there. So we abandoned that idea. We moved into the idea, well, okay, let's break a piece off, and then you can actually see like the inside of the mince pie, which is really what the taste is all about. And then we've then removed the front. After a few variations on that, we removed the front broken part of it so that you could just kind of see in. And we thought, okay, that's kind of giving us the shape we want. So it's playing around, it's deciding where your subject's going to be, what's going to be in the background, what your depth of focus is going to be, where your lights are coming from, and each time we're going click. I've got the camera tethered to my tablet. Again, can you see it in? I don't think you can see it in that photo. There's another photo I've got a bit later, which I'll show you where you can see the tablet. The tablet allows me to go click, and I can see it on a larger screen. And so we've now got we've got the setup we want. So now we're going to start introducing the icing sugar. And basically what happens is Maggie's standing there with, I will say actually, while I'm photographing these mince pies, Maggie made the mince pies, and they are absolutely yummy. Real collaboration, this photo shoot was. So she's got a sieve with some icing sugar in it, and then as she holds it, she taps the side of the sieve, and that causes some of the icing sugar to come through and fall down. And then, so you can just see here, just starting to enter. Now, at this point, I'm trying to get the timing for going click. And I've kind of clicked just a little bit too soon. It hasn't kind of started. It's just, I'm just getting the first bit. Then I'm too late and I kind of miss it. This one is still a bit too early. It's kind of come down in a big chunk, and I wanted it a little bit more spread out than that. So we're sort of playing around, and then I suddenly thought, oh, I think, yeah, then the main light didn't go off, so you can see this where the sort of the second light, that's really, this is the main light and the back light. If you're not sure what the back light is doing, or the other side light, essentially that's what it's doing. It's just catching these bits over here, which would otherwise be completely lost in shadow. And I was thinking, oh, what about a coloured gel? I'd mentioned this idea to Maya, so I thought, well, let's see what that would do. And so try to go. First of all, I had a go at doing a red light, but I thought, no, that doesn't. I thought Christmassy maybe red would work, but actually I don't like the red. The red just didn't seem to work with it. So then thought the yellow. I thought, oh, that's kind of got something to it. Maybe it's a little bit like kind of firelight, a little bit of warmth. The yellow certainly adds a warmth to it, and so maybe it could be like candles or firelight or something like that. So we tried a couple of shots, and so you can see here, again, maybe I caught it just a bit too early while it's still kind of coming down, but we did that, and then I thought, oh, what about a blue light? I wonder what that would do. So I swapped it over, and suddenly it went, ooh, I like that. Now, I don't know about you. Maybe you might prefer the yellow light, and if that's okay, or if that's true, that's okay. That's your decision to make. And so it's worth reiterating at this point that it's a really important part of photography, is that you're making the decisions which appeal to you. Maybe you like the red light. Maybe you prefer the yellow light. For me, the blue did it. The blue suddenly kind of gave it this nighttime feel, this late night kind of, whether these are sitting out for Santa or whether somebody's come down for a midnight snack and just taken a bite out of one of them. I really liked the blue light, so we thought, well, okay, let's go for that. And then a few shots later, we got it coming down where we wanted, and I really liked that. and then from that I edited up, and that's the edited version of that photo. So just to show you then the difference then between, okay, we don't need the, so that's the unedited, and then that's the edited. And that, I think, looks like a really nice, tasty. It's certainly making my mouth water now while I'm looking at it. We've got the light coming down. You can see the juicy, rich fruit mix in here. We've got that sense of, because it's a wide aperture, because it's only 3.2 f-stop, we've got some of these bits of icing are being caught, frozen, and other bits are sort of blurring away into the background. We've got the lights behind. I just thought, okay, I'm happy with that. I think I'm really quite happy with that. So we got that one in the bag, and we thought, right, okay, let's try a different kind of photo. So I'm going to show you in a sec another kind of mince pie shot that we tried. But first of all, what I will do is I will just flick back over to the comments and see if we have anything else. Okay, so where we got Rosie's eaten her mince pie. Stacey says, I'm close to the end of the month, closest to Mardi Gras. Okay, we have something close to mince pies here, right? Rosie says mince pies look delicious and the reindeer is inspired. Reindeer, and the reindeer was lovely with a bit of icing sugar on it as well. Becca says they look tasty, and they certainly did. Maya says it's hard to catch a moment. Yeah, that's that, trying to get that bit. And I remember one of your second photo, Maya, was where there was a really thick layer of icing sugar, and yeah, I remember at the time thinking maybe you've kind of overdone that. But then actually trying to do these shots and realizing how many shots you've got to take where you just keep missing the perfect bit of, you know, the icing sugar starts building and building and building, and then I fully understood why there was so much icing sugar on the bottom of your shot. So yeah, where are we? And Becca says looks like snow with the blue light. Yeah, that, I think it does. I think it has more of that snow look to it. It is that kind of, you know, that blue light gives it a nighttime look, and that idea of a kind of snowy night, almost moonlight kind of feel to it. Stacey says, I gained 5 pounds. They look delicious. What, you gained 5 pounds just from looking at them? That's how delicious they were. Right. Okay. Cool. Okay. So I will just say at this point again, if there was anything else you wanted to know about what I was talking earlier about with any tips or tricks you particularly want to know about doing the low light photography while, you know, trying to photograph your family at Christmas or any other celebration, drop those into the comments as well so I can look at them in a little while. Okay, so we've got that photo. Where are we? So we've got this photo in the bag, and we think, right, okay, so next shot. The next shot we wanted to go for was, while this one sort of felt quite yeah, almost quite kind of modern and contemporary. I think the blue light kind of does that for it as well. We thought we'd actually wanted to try for something a little bit more rustic, homely, country kitchen kind of feel to it. So for that, we decided we would go for a glass plate, white tablecloth, maybe a little bit of greenery, and see how that turned out. Oh, actually, just before I get to that, let me just show you. I did another. It's just after we'd done this shot, I thought, I wonder what it looks like from above, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And then I pulled out further, and you've got all the lights in the background, and to me that suddenly looked like it was a kind of like Mince Pies in concert. With an audience in the background all sort of raising their lighters and glowing stuff, and I actually edited that one up a little bit more just to kind of give that feel to it. And it's quite strange when you think, you know, when you compare that to you know, this one very close in, but this one pulling back and getting the lights, and then it just sort of, the light fading out at the edges. It does look very much like a kind of, either, you know, a concert happening with, you know, people in the distance, or maybe across the water you have the city lights or something. It's a kind of fun kind of bit. You can play around with your imagination there. Okay. So from here, yeah, let's move on to the rustic one that I was talking about. Not that. Here. Right, okay. So once again, we start off, let's make sure we're getting the lighting right. Only what I did this time actually was, instead, because I wanted, this was kind of going to be a sort of slightly more in the kitchen feel, rather than having the narrow softbox, I then got an umbrella, a wide umbrella, and I turned my flash so it bounced into the umbrella and then back out onto the table, creating quite a large light source. Much larger than the narrow part, because this time I wasn't worried about getting a background in. And if I, where are we? Yeah, actually, if I just go back here, there we go. Now you can kind of see the setup. I'll come on to how that's done afterwards. That flash is sticking to one side. That's just because I've been adjusting it. But basically, that was turned 90 degrees clockwise, so it was bouncing into the umbrella and then coming back out onto the table. As you can see, I've got the camera tethered up to my tablet, which isn't showing up very well here, but this is just a very quick shot just to sort of show you the setup. So back to here, first shot, trying to get it lit. And then we thought we'd try and get a bit of greenery in, get a little bit of, quite liking the glass feel to it. At this point, we weren't so aware of just how much that was going to get covered up by icing sugar and become pretty much irrelevant. So we tried a bit of greenery, a little few Christmas baubles, not quite, move it around, change it a bit more, put a few more things on the plate. And then we're starting to, so after a few shots, like, you know, playing around like this, we're again starting to get to that place where you go, okay, that's kind of looking like we're in the place we want to be. We've got some a bit of sort of pine tree in the background here. We've got a stretch of ivy. We've got this lovely kind of ivy with variegated ivy, is it? Anyway, with the different kind of colours, the green and the pale. We've got some pine cones in the background. We've got a wooden chair, which was a nice kind of kitchen chair. Got the painted wooden wall in the background. So we thought, okay, this is kind of a different thing. And what I've got here, my settings are, rather than having a wide aperture of 3.2, I've actually gone for a 7.1 in this. So an f7.1, which is giving me a much deeper depth of field. So not only is the front of this in focus, but the one behind it is also in focus. And the focus doesn't really start dropping off until you start getting behind, you know, the back of the plate. I mean, these are all kind of pushed slightly towards the front as well. But even there, it's not completely blurred out in the way that those little Christmas lights were in the previous one. We can make out the chair, we can make out the background. And so this is what we thought we would have a go at doing. So played around a little bit with this. Again, so here you can see, I'm not sure how many attempts we got to that, but you can already tell that the plate is already, the glass plate is getting covered with the icing sugar. So, you know, playing with that. And then I suddenly thought again, oh, well, what about the idea of introducing a coloured light? I hadn't intended to originally, but we thought we'd give it a try. So I put a yellow light on. But it didn't really seem to do it for me, because I think the difference is because the main light was so much of a bigger light. You know, it's lighting up the tablecloth, it's lighting up the back wall, it's lighting up the chair. That just adding in a little bit of yellow really wasn't doing it. It's not like you feel that cosy candlelight. So again, try changing the colour. Try the blue light, you know, which had worked so well in the last photo. But again, wasn't really doing anything. I thought, well, okay, well, what if we introduce a green, there's a red light, definitely not, and I introduced a green light to try and tie in with the greenery. But in the end, none of them really did it for me. So we just went back to actually only having pretty much the single light coming down. What I wanted, a lot of these kind of country kitchen rustic type photos, if you look in the magazines, they're very often lit by a single light source, and that single light source is either the kitchen window or is emulating the kitchen window. So you don't necessarily need to have a whole big fancy lighting setup. A single light in this case would actually do. So we did that, and I thought, well, that's not bad. I quite like that. And then suddenly I thought, well, actually, what if I do zoom in and do the wide aperture? And so this, I've gone to 3.5 on the aperture, zoomed in a bit closer, and now, there's something in that. Actually, I prefer that. This, that was okay. That was kind of fine, and I could have edited that up and polished it a bit more, and that would have been fine. But coming in closer just seemed to make a little bit more to it. So we went ahead and we, lovely little snowstorm. Again, you can start to see the layers of icing sugar that are building up. And we got to this point, and I suddenly realised that actually I had it focused in slightly the wrong place. So whilst it was kind of quite nice and sharp just on the edge of this, the back edge of this ivy leaf, just about getting there, by the time we got to the kind of body of the pie, it was out of focus. And this was the problem, because all I'd really done, I'd had it sitting there at 7.1 and I just dialed it down to 3.5 without properly double checking where the focal point was getting. So once I realised that, I then moved in and then set it to being just inside the pie rather than just, you can see now that this leaf is now no longer in sharp focus. The sharp focus point is just inside the topping and the pie, and that then was a much better place to put it. And then at that point we could get the snow as we wanted it, and we ended up with that. So that's the edited version of that. And for those who were on Facebook and saw the event page that I set up, this is the one that I used for the event page to let everybody know that this is what we were going to be talking about this evening. So with this in mind, so now we've got two quite different photos. We've got where are we? Yeah, we've got our rustic mince pie, and we've got our nighttime colourful in concert mince pie. They're both a set of mince pies, one broken open, icing sugar coming down, but the mood and feel of them is really quite different, and that's what I was trying to do. I wanted to just get something quite different. So we then thought we'd have a go at doing a third. Actually, I'll tell you what, before we come on to the third one, I will just flick back, see if there's any more comments. Okay, Stacey wants the recipe. Really have to talk to Maggie about that. Ursula says she likes the wide shot. Right, cool. Rosie's asking, which lens am I using, please? It's pretty much the one that I tend to keep on here most of the time, unless there's a good reason not to, which is my 24-70, Canon 24-70mm. So 2.8 width. This is my kind of workhorse lens as such. I have 4 lenses for the most part. This is the one that's on the camera 90% of the time. I've got a 70-200, nice big for doing zoom in when I want to get that detail, try and capture that bit in the distance or whatever. I've got, for my wide angle, I've got a 10-22mm, and that's great. I love playing around with the wide angle in certain places. I have the nifty 50 little fixed prime 50mm lens, which is one of the first lenses I got when I switched to a DSLR, and every now and again, because it can go to f1.8, and it's got a really beautiful bokeh on it. It's a lovely little lens, but most of the time I've got the 70-24 on. But you'll have a lens which is your favourite. But it's mainly knowing that with these kind of photos, the ones where I'm going for that narrow depth of focus. So you want to have something where you can get as wide an aperture as you can. Okay, hope that helps. Oh, and then Rosie says, never thought about turning the umbrella round. Yes, 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 yes. It's a really important thing that most of the time, if you think of the umbrella as a curved, let's say my hand's like that, as a kind of curved umbrella. Most of the time, we've got our flash pointing into it, and when the light hits the umbrella, the light comes out the other side and spreads. But sometimes you can still end up with kind of hot spots. But if you kind of reverse the umbrella, or rather, you still have the flash going into the umbrella, but essentially you turn the whole unit round. So instead of worrying about the light that's going out that way, half the light is getting bounced back the way. So you're shooting into it and it's curving and bouncing back. And that can give you a nice, really soft shadow. It can still light up the place pretty well. It's not going to light as much as, say, one of these umbrellas which has got a silver foil in it, but sometimes those can give quite a hard shadow. Turning your umbrella around is really good for creating a soft shadows. You might have to up the power of your light a bit, but that's okay as long as you've got the room and the ability to do that. Then yes, turning your umbrella around is quite a good way of spreading the light, but not spreading it in quite the same way as when it's round the usual way. Okay, what else have we got? Stacey loves the rustic. Pat looks yummy to me, and I don't even like mince pies. I know. I don't understand it myself, but fair enough. Everybody's got different tastes, Pat. But yes, they're yummy to me. Oh, Rosie says, I have the Nifty 50 for my Nikon, which I love. I will try it. Yes, do. Again, something like this is ideal photography for when you're wanting to do that kind of close-up, narrow bokeh. Lots of bokeh, wide aperture. Then your little Nifty 50 is a really handy little lens to use. And because it's a prime lens, it hasn't got the moving parts in it. The quality of it is really quite astounding, considering it's pretty much the cheapest lens you can buy for a DSLR. It's about £100 or something like that. Compared to probably close to about £1,000 for something like this, or a couple of £1,000 for the big zoom lenses. It's only £100. It's well worth having in your collection. Right. Okay. Oh, Stacey has a 35mm. Yep. Yeah. You can you'll get a lot. 35mm. You're starting to get a slightly wider angle. So a little bit depends, on how wide you can go for your aperture. It might not be able to give you the bokeh that you quite like. Whereas this has got a 2.8. We'll go to 2.8. But you can also zoom in a bit, and the more you zoom in, the narrower that aperture, that depth of focus gets. For those who don't do the technical, don't worry, I'm just about finished on that. For those who do the technical, you'll understand what I mean. Right, okay, so we've now got two in the bag. We decided we would just have it. We had an idea for a third one where what we would maybe do was shoot from above onto something like a wooden board, a breadboard, was the original idea. So let me just see here. Let's flip back over. And so cleared all the bits and pieces out of the way, put a breadboard down, and I tried shooting from above. And I've got the setup, and I just thought, I don't know. I was getting ready to start sort of preparing, laying out what we would maybe have around the board, what we were going to start, layering up the stuff. And then Maggie said, "Oh, what about this old tin that I've got? This old, baking tray that I've got and it's, I think it was her mum's originally." And so we thought, oh, okay, well, let's try that. So we went and got the tray, and and I thought, okay, that's kind of fun. We could maybe sort of play with that. We just originally just sort of check how things were working. Just stuck 4 pies in. But there's a lovely quality to this old metal tray. You can see the kind of scallop shell things that you have on this side, or the ivy leaf that you've got on this side. They're just kind of round and plain in the central part. What's that say? Seamless, hygienic. made in England. Right, okay, so I mean, it's a lovely, beautiful old tray. So we then played. Out came the pastry reindeer and the reindeer cutter. We thought, well, okay, rather than just having them straight in a row, let's get just create a different shape. Started playing around, and then thought, well, okay, let's get some icing sugar around the edge of it. And Maggie had this idea. Well, let's put one of the reindeer. There was 3 in total, but one of them, the antlers, had started to break off. So we put that one down while she was sprinkling the icing sugar round, so that when we got to the end, we actually have reindeer shadow or imprint of reindeer on that one. So that was quite a fun kind of shot to do, and edited up. We ended up with that. So 3 kinds of shot we ended up with. We've got that, we've got that, or 4 if you want to have that in concert too. So that gives you an idea of what you can do with not a lot really. I mean, I was using 2 light sources. How, even if you don't have off-camera flashes, if you have a window and you could get your table quite close to it, a window light and a reflector on the other side would do the same trick. And actually, if you had, if on the reflector, now your reflector can be something like a bought reflector, or it can be a sheet of white card, large sheet of white card, or a large sheet of yellow card, or blue card, or green card, or actually, if you had something like a green purse or a blue perspex, or something like that, then if there's enough light coming through the window, the reflection will take on some of that colour to give you a little bit of backlight as well. So even if you don't have, any fancy lights or anything like that, there's amazing what you can do with just natural light and a little bit of thought and imagination as well. So I hope that's given you some ideas. Have fun, eh? The hardest bit, to be honest, is not eating what you're trying to photograph. And we talked about that last week with the in-house chocolates shoot, and the vast amounts of chocolate that was sitting on the table that we couldn't touch all day long because it was part of the set, and then going absolutely stir crazy and devouring large amounts of it once the shoot was over. So that's mince pies for you. I hope you found that useful. Maya, I hope you found that gave you a little bit more ideas, because everything that I've done with the mince pies is completely transferable to what you were doing with the Alatka. I do think there is a thing about getting in close with food. Well, I suppose food photography in general, you're talking about there's different ways of getting the story, and by and large you're either looking for, if you're not looking for a strict catalogue kind of white background, this is what it looks like, which is fairly boring, you're either looking for food in the process of sort of being eaten, or in a context, a sort of wider context, a pulled back, a sort of sense of where, so a mince pie on a table full of food maybe, or somebody holding it ready to eat it. Or I think if you can get in close, these ones that I did, I favoured the getting close bit, where you're sort of so close it's almost going to stick to the end of your nose if you kind of get in any closer to look at it. And I feel it allows you to feel like then what's happening is the food is everything. All the background is then just adding little bits of extra feel or flavour or mood to the primary objective, which is the food. And the food has got to make your mouth water. The whole point of food photography is you've got to look at it and you've got to want to eat it. Now, fine, if it's a lovely piece of meat and you happen to be vegetarian, that's never going to work. Or like Pat, if you don't like mince pies, mince pie photography is not going to do it for you. But if your target audience, which is people who do like the food you're photographing, you have to make it look edible. And I think getting in close is a really good way of doing that. Okay, so hope that was useful. So what else have we got here? Oh, Rosie's coming, saving for the 70 to 200. It may take a while. Yeah, I remember when I bought it, I oh, I because it is something like sort of between £1,600 to £2,000 worth of lens. And to justify spending that amount of money, it didn't matter that I'd done a few jobs specifically where I was trying to get the money specifically to try and get that lens. The horror of the idea of spending that amount of money to buy a lens, which you then, are you ever going to be able to justify it? Having bought it, I'm so glad I've got it. It's a brilliant, brilliant lens, and it's paid for itself many times over through the jobs that I've been doing in the years since. But to begin with, the fear of buying it was huge. Stacey says, how about a 90mm? A 90mm, yeah, that will probably work better than a 35mm for doing... If you're trying to do the close-up photography, the 90mm will get you in closer. The 35 will take you much more of the background. The 35mm is much better if you're trying to do the shot of everybody sitting down to the table to eat. But the 90mm is better if you want to kind of get in amongst the food and actually sort of have the food dominating. Oh, Rosie says she's got the exact same tray. It was also her mum's. Okay, that's brilliant. That must have been a particular era of time then. Okay, Maya said, I understand I did not use the wide enough aperture. Okay, your pictures are very artistic. Oh, thank you very much, Maya. Okay, well, I'm glad that helps then. So yes, if that's giving you a better idea of how to get in there, then that's great. Oh, Ursula says the 70 to 200 is fantastic in Nikon. Okay, so there you go, Rosie, if you're using Nikon. Nikon or Nikon? How do you say it? I've heard it both ways, and I'm a Canon user, so I don't know. I'll stick with Nikon for the moment. So, yep, there you go, Rosie. Ursula is advocating for the 70 to 200. Cool. Okay, so nobody's put in any questions about photographing Christmas anymore, so either I've covered everything or you just more than happy you know it all already, and there aren't any pressing questions, which is fine. That's good. Comments are coming nicely. Just a wee reminder that if you're finding any of this useful, interesting, and you would like to support the podcast, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is the place to donate, contribute, and help out. Always appreciated, though not compulsory. Okay. So, next up then. So we're now going to move on to the critique section. I've got not hugely overloaded with critique, which is probably just as well because I've spent well over an hour now talking about mince pies. And I'm feeling hungry. But the two critique things that I'm going to talk about will both take a little while as well. There's sort of some big ideas within them. And then I'll talk about, before we sign off, I'll also talk about what we're going to do next week in between Christmas and New Year. I've got a couple of ideas. Meanwhile, keep the comments flowing if you've got any questions. But also, yeah, it looks like this conversation going backwards and forwards about lenses now. Oh, Mandy's just got here. Good evening, everyone. Hi, Mandy. Glad you could make it. You've missed the mince pies. I'm now going to start talking about the critique section. So, critique section, for those of you who haven't used it before, this is a chance where you can stick your photos into the group, Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. You go to Facebook, just type in Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. You'll find the group, join the group, and then you can submit images. Submit your image. Tell me a bit about what it is that you're struggling with, where your problems lie, what you were trying to achieve, where the difficulties were, and I will do my best to try and help you. The more information you give me about the shot, not just the technicals, but the intent, then the easier it is for me to help. And actually that notion of intent is really quite strong now. What's that sad face from Mandy? Is that because you've missed the mince pies? You're just going to have to watch it on catch up. Yeah, that notion of intent, I'm going to talk a little bit now when we come on to this critique section, particularly for Robert. So, Robert in Texas. All right, yeah, it's definitely lens conversation going on in the comments here. Becca's got her 70 to 300 is her favourite lens. Gosh, 73. Oh, and Stacey's got a 16 to 300. Wow, that's a real big range. That is. Right. Okay. So, what are we going to talk about? Robert. So, let's show you Robert's picture. This is the one that he's edited up and he put into, but then he also sent me the original from what it was. So when you look at this, you think, oh, there's a car and a reflection and something's not quite right. And then depending on how exposed you've been to these photos, how quick you are at picking it up, how tired you happen to be, or what the resolution of the screen happens to be, you suddenly go, oh, it's upside down. That's actually the reflection is at the top and it's the actual car underneath. So what Robert said when he sent me this image was, this is my first attempt at Photoshop. I've been using Lightroom exclusively. I saw a picture that used a similar technique and I thought I would try and improve on the concept. Didn't spend a lot of time on it, perhaps 90 minutes. Still an hour and a half on a photo, you know, if you're playing around on Photoshop, that's a fair amount of time, Robert. I took about 1,000 photos. Yeah, that's the kind of obsessives we are. Good. Yeah, next time you probably won't take quite as many, but that notion, that's partly what I love about the digital age. There are people who still use manual analog cameras, and there's a definite art form in using them. There really is. But to my mind, it's a bit like sort of using glass plate photography or something like that. You know, it's now a specialist thing. One of the great things about digital photography is you can take 1,000 photos and pick the one you want. Now, as time goes on, maybe you don't need to take 1,000 because you took 1,000 because this was the first time you were really trying to do this. Next time you try this, maybe it'll only take 500. The time after that, you'll only maybe take 200. Maybe after that, it'll only take 100. You'll never get down to where you just take one photo and that's it. You know, at the very least, you'll be taking 25. And then before you go, either it's not working or maybe I'm getting closer to it. But my friend Alan talks about, is a landscape photographer, he talks about narrowing the odds. Basically, what you're trying to do is put things in your favour so that you'll take the fewer photos you take before you get to the one that you're actually really wanting. And it's back to that thing I've said many times, that photography is your 125th of a second or however going click, and the rest of the time is problem solving. You take the photo, you look in the back of the camera or you look on the tablet or whatever it's tethered to and you go, that wasn't what I was looking for. What do I need to do in order to get what I was looking for? Now what you did was you took 1,000 photos and then you decided that from this one you would drag it into Photoshop and play with it. This was the best one for composition. I had difficulty getting the colour to pop in the water while keeping it dark and mysterious. I think I'll be taking more photos of this throughout the year to try and get a better shot. So one of the things that cropped up in bits of conversation, which was really quite interesting, was some of the interesting bits of this was even the comments that cropped up once Robert had submitted it into the group. So Robert's got this photo and before he starts editing it, he's rotated it like this. Now he's rotated it, the colour isn't as strong in here. So he then, actually I'll tell you what, let's just show you. Let's open this with Photoshop and I can show you kind of how, if it's going, is that, should do, yeah, there we go. So he's not just rotated it, he's flipped it as well. So what I'll do is I'll flip vertical. And then from there, the first thing that he's done as well is that the problem is when you look at this, you can instantly see that it's an inverted image because the stronger part of the image is the car that's underneath. That's brighter. So what he then did was he decided he would darken it down. Now, I'm not totally sure, there's many different ways of going black and white. He went to black and white. Now, Actually, one of the things I would first go to is the channels. The red actually makes it lighter. Green channel, that's quite interesting. Blue channel, maybe a bit dull. I'd perhaps go for your green channel. So if I was to copy that green channel and then paste it back on here, then what you might do is create a mask around this. So if I'm just going to do this very roughly, just to give you a sense of what you could do. You obviously took 90 minutes. I'm not going to take 90 minutes because nobody's going to hang around that long while I do that. But I'll go to here, create a mask, and there we go. We've got a little missed corner there. We've now masked off the background. Oh, no, that wasn't what I was trying to do. There we go. That's what I was trying to just narrow that down. No, not there. On there. So we've now got a kind of black and white car underneath here. And that's stopping grabbing the attention quite as much, except for the fact that the top part is now still not as sharp as we would like it. So you can play around then. You can play around with curves, levels, hue, saturation. I mean, so if we up the saturation, that brightens it, although it tends to brighten everything else as well, which is maybe not what we want. So maybe in the color, what I will do is I'll grab the reds, no, that's the yellows, where's the reds, and then just boost the saturation on the red, say, something like that. And now that brightens that up a bit. And now we've got that. If I copy all that onto, okay, that wasn't quite what I meant to do. Select all, copy, paste, yep, there we go. And I'll quickly just drag that into Camera Raw. And what we might do is we'll maybe add a vignette, just to kind of pull those corners in a little bit more. We'll take go back to the basic, we'll take those highlights down, so maybe I have to darken down that bottom bit a little bit more separately. Up the exposure of the top part a little bit, maybe play around with the contrast a little bit more, add a bit of texture, add a bit of clarity. Yeah, something like that. It's not perfect, but we're kind of getting there. And then what if I take the curves and just drop that down a little bit more, but from the mask, but just have that so that's only really down in the puddle side of it. You have something like that, and there you have kind of what you were going for. We'll just do a quick comparison, see how that looks. That was your original, and so that's your version, and yeah, quick kind of version of it. I think yours is slightly stronger. Doesn't really matter. Now, what was interesting, what I was going to say about this is, what I found particularly interesting is in the comments in the Facebook group. Somebody said, alluded to the idea that it would look better if it was upside down. And it was kind of, well, what do you mean? It kind of is upside down. But what they meant was really just flipping it back the way it should have been originally, which was, the right way up. Why was he doing the reflection? Somebody else came in and said something like about the fact that the sky in the reflection didn't match the sky on the thing. Because basically what's happening here is we're seeing the puddle, and in the puddle are a whole bunch of leaves, and those leaves are creating an effect. So, you can see all the leaves in here. So it's not reflecting the sky completely. So we can go, yeah, well, that's true. But the thing is I don't think that's what Robert was after. Now, Robert, you can correct me if you want. To my mind, the point of this photo is that you look at it and your very first thought is, oh, that's a very low down picture of a car. You assume it to be the right way round. And then your brain goes, oh, something's not quite right. Then you realise that it is in fact a reversed image. And the idea is that, so why would you do that? And it's not just a case of, well, you didn't realise you'd accidentally flipped it and just left it that way. It was a conscious choice to do it. And it's an artistic choice. Now, maybe you wouldn't make that choice. Maybe you would. Robert saw this, seen other people do this. He liked that idea, so he tried to do his own version of it, which is great, which is really what it's about. And part of the critique here, and it's an interesting thing to understand, because sometimes people put into the group pictures when they can say, I'm open to critique from anybody. If you've got any suggestions, please do. The thing about critique isn't always necessarily what you would do in their place. Critique is really trying to understand what they were trying to achieve, even if it isn't something you would have done. What were they trying to achieve, and how can you best help them? Have you got any insights which can help them to do that? And with this, I think the idea with it, the fact that you can look at it and it isn't, something's not quite right. Well, fine, that's getting sort of into the semi-abstract. There are artistic choices being made. Robert knows there's leaves in the sky. Robert knows that the reflection isn't as strong as the original car, because it is a reflection and it's got leaves and stuff over it. But he's then played with that to try and counteract that. I mean, one of the interesting things about this angle is you are actually lower than the road. Sports cars, you're always trying to get if you're trying to photograph a car, especially a sports car, getting down at road level to photograph it is always one of those things. You're trying to get at tyre level and shoot up, so you're looking up at this really fancy sports car. But you can only go as low as the road or pavement will let you. The interesting bit here is because he's shooting the reflection, he's actually underneath the car. We're actually seeing this bit of reflection here is actually under the car. We couldn't see that in real life. We couldn't actually be at that angle. He's managed to get lower than the car, than the camera can physically get by going through the reflection. So I think it's a fun idea. I think the fact that it doesn't match up is one of those things that is deliberately playing with our sense of expectation. Now, maybe it's not for everybody, and it doesn't have to be, but it will be for some people, and it was for Robert. And I think that's brilliant. I think you've had a lot of fun doing this, obviously. Now, in terms of composition, what I would actually say is I tend to feel that this car is just a bit too far to the front. Now, really, if you've got a car pointing forward, you want a little bit more at the space for it to breathe at the front of it than you do at the back of it. And you've also maybe cut a little bit too close. Let me put this on. Where are we? Can I get to content? Right. Okay. Content aware. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's put it up there. Right. Where were we? No. Select all, copy, paste, that's what I want, yeah. Okay, so from here, I'm going to use the content aware just to give you that sense of where I think this should be positioned. I think if we you had a little bit more space at the bottom, a little bit less at the, but a bit more at the front, a little bit less at the back, and you sort of create it so it sort of sits more like that, but you've also got a little bit more room down here. Let's just see what that does for a moment. Won't create it exact, but actually that's not too bad. I think at this point we're sort of getting there a little bit more. Maybe you can come up just a touch more to here, a little touch more down there, something like that. But can you see that notion of having a bit more at the front of the car rather than behind gives you a feeling of it? And in fact, actually at this point, the leaves almost give it a sense of movement. Those lines that are sort of moving across in a horizontal almost kind of make it feel like it's moving. Because you've got a little bit more room at the front, the car is now moving into the picture rather than sort of feeling like it's disappearing out of it. And in fact, let's just nudge that just a little bit more that way. Let's try that again. Take a little bit there, a little touch there, give it just a touch more to breathe. And I think that crop, works even better at that point. Whether you would keep in that bit of the tree or not, I just kind of feel like it's a strong line kind of coming down, cutting it. But again, you've it's up to you whether you want to keep the pole in or not. Let's just do a quick, see what it looks like without. Yeah, personally, I think that works better. But again, it's your choice, entirely up to you as to whether you want to keep that in or not. Again, maybe remove the reflection of it as well. But I think if you take that as opposed to, well, okay, let's just take a look at yours. Now you can see with yours, it just does kind of feel like it's a little, it's at the front of the picture is just sort of, it's almost out of it, and there's a bit too much room behind. Okay, so I hope that helps, Robert. I hope that gives you some ideas to play around with that. Now, I seem to remember essentially part of the problem that you've got is it doesn't rain so much in Texas, so when it does, you've got to grab the puddles when you can, but then the puddles don't always have what you want in them. So seasonally, it's going to be tricky to get the light that you want. If you wanted to have bright daylight, but you also wanted to have the puddles, I guess, because it's quite warm in Texas as well, and so the puddles will evaporate quite quickly. You're going to have to kind of choose your time it is going to be a chase across the year trying to find those right times, I think. But anyway, hopefully that gives you some insights and ideas. If there's anything that I haven't answered on this which you were hoping I would, let me know. Either drop it in the comments or send me an email, and I'll try and address that aspect for you. Okay, thanks very much for sending that one in, Robert. Let's do a little flick back, see if we have any more comments. Where are we? Right, okay, so VG saying splendid one, Robert. Ursula says, what would happen if you reduce the opacity of the black and white layer? Yeah, I suppose at that point, yes, you would have a dull red, wouldn't it? Yes. That's true. So that would, okay, let's try that. Let's flip back over. That's a nice idea. So let's just, we'll go back to here for the moment. And there's that black and white layer there. And let's just reduce the opacity of it. So yes, you see you end up with a sort of, as we bring it down from bright red to a duller red to a duller red. So there's still a hint of red in it, but not as much as there was. Yeah, no, that's an interesting idea, Ursula. I think, so that's another idea for you to play around with there, Robert. Thanks for that thought. Okay, where are we? Robert hate to say it, but I have an appointment. I have to drop off. Right, cool. Fine, I'm sure you will catch up I know you've caught up several before with the on YouTube, so hope your appointment goes well. What else have we got? Steve Hill says, one of my favourite lenses and very similar to Canon's in character. Oh, Steve, okay, good to see you here. Thanks for coming along. So, yeah, another endorsement then for that 70-200 there, Rosie. Oh, Theanne says she's bought me a coffee. Oh, thank you very much, Theanne. Much appreciated. Stacey says, I think sometimes we do not realise where it's best to crop. Yeah, cropping is one of these things of deciding where to do. I mean, I've talked about it before, especially if you go back to some of the early, if you go to YouTube, find around episodes 1, 2, 3. I mean, it really was early on. I think cropping was one of the first things that I talked about, but there's no doubt I will talk more about that in the future. Okay, Robert, hasn't actually disappeared just yet. He's just said, agree that it needs more room in front of the car. It was raining outside, about 35 degrees F outside. Very uncomfortable. So 35, I can't even think. Nearly freezing. Wow. Okay, so that's, 32 is 0 degrees. Gosh, that's cold for Texas, isn't it? Maybe you live in the hills a bit. Okay, cool. Right. So, working our way forward. Right, next picture I want to talk about is Lucas's. I'm going to talk a little bit about the notion of high key photography. So let's close the mince pies, close the car, and find this photo here. So now last week Lucas put up a really edgy, grizzled kind of edit of a bloke, which got a lot of likes and comments and bits and pieces. This week he put up this picture, which has got also a huge amount of likes and comments. So obviously, portraits are your thing, Lucas. You're doing well. You're getting a lot of good feedback from it. Now, what Lucas said was, "Hi all. I was always amazed by high key photos, and I found this quite challenging. This is one of my first attempts. Pictures taken on the balcony. The sun was hitting some kind of semi-transparent big piece of plastic behind my son in the picture. It softened the light a bit, I think. Anyway, when I saw it, I thought it would be a good idea to use it. Critique welcome. Any advice on high key photography as well?" So basically what's happened here is, so Lucas's son is out on the balcony. Behind him is this sort of large semi-transparent plastic or perspex thing where the sun is hitting it. It's not completely transparent, but it's hitting it. The sun's kind of coming through and it's created a whiteout light. And then in the editing process, Lucas has taken this, he's converted it to black and white, and then brightened everything up another level. And what this is, the term he used is high key photography. And basically, there's a counterbalance. There's what's known as high key photography and low key photography. Now, low key photography was more what he was doing last week, which is where essentially the blacks dominate. It's all about darkness, moodiness, which is then punctuated by lighter areas. But essentially, it's dominated by the dark and the black. High key photography, by comparison, is dominated by the light. So it's, very often white backgrounds, very pale, basically like this. And then this is what happens here is the tonal contrast of the dark eyes and the dark bit of hair, the little gap in the lips, the eyebrows, these then all stand out. They really stand out. So that's really the notion. Now, to show you, I thought what I would do is just sort of show you how you can kind of create these effects a little bit myself. So just going and dragging through the archives. So right, let's I'll show you this little photo. When did I take that photo? I took this photo myself about two and a half years ago. Doesn't really matter particularly. I just want to kind of show you how it works. If you're going to attempt to do high key photography, the first thing you need to do is, as best as you can, get a white background or an even whiter background, a bright background. Lucas was lucky enough to have a kind of white piece of perspex. I'm using a white wall, and then what I've got is I've got to flash the other side of this screen, this bit here, so the light is reflecting directly onto the white wall, so it's whitening out the wall. So what I might do with this, just to sort of start off, I'll just kind of crop that in so we're not having to worry about that side of things. And then, so the first thing you do, I mean, most high key tends to be black and white. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And then what you would do, now there's a couple of kind of different, fairly easy way. You can grab the levels, and you can, now if I drag it all the way up to the left, you can see I kind of fade in and out. Now from something like that, I've kind of whited out too much that I've lost all the detail there. What I might do is sort of bring it up to the edge, just where I'm about to lose the detail, but don't quite. And then maybe take the middle one and I can move that a bit higher again. Now everything gets sort of a bit faded there. Perhaps then what I can also do is I can then take the burn tool and on the layer underneath, darken down bits and pieces as well. So that's probably overkill. Just have that. So just to kind of show you, if there's particular areas I wanted to darken the beard, darken the hair, maybe darken the eyes or the eyebrows, something like that. So I can up the levels, but just darken, where are we? There we go. Just darken the areas that I would kind of want to leave as such. That looks a bit messy. So what I might also do then, that's too much burn and stuff without it. Let's go back to here. Again, if I go into camera raw filter, take the saturation out, and again, play with the exposure, bring it up, something like that. But then maybe play with the clarity or something and the texture a little bit. So I create a bit of contrast between the light and the dark, but also bring the light up. But so what you're really looking for is to try and just have, it's mostly bright, but then you're having punctuation of shadow and stuff. Now at this point, what I'm also aware of is my waistcoat is just kind of getting in the way. So at that point, what I might do is just literally paint it out a bit, you know, just sort of leave a little bit of the collar in, something like that. And it gives you that rough. Now that's very, very quick and easy. Now, it doesn't always really necessarily work. This is okay. It's not necessarily a brilliant example. The part of the thing with high key is it's very often also associated with mood, whereas low key tends to be a dark and moody kind of feel. High key it tends to be lighter and, you know, quite often a sort of fun or a lightness to it, a lightness of mood as well as a lightness of light, which it does make Lucas's one a sort of slight. It's an interesting kind of idea, which is there's almost a kind of melancholiness to the expression on the child's face. He's looking down, he's not looking up to the camera, sort of lost in thought. It's not a bright, happy, smiling face, but it is a very bright kind of. So there's a contrast there, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad. It just shows that there is a contrast. I also quite like the diagonal in this, I must admit. Whereas this one is very kind of flat and straight on. Another option of showing you how this works, I took a couple of photos. This is a photo shoot I did about 4 or 5 years ago with a woman called Iona Barker. It was, and we had, she was, this is the unedited rough, she's costume maker, amongst any other things. We were doing this shoot, and so she's wearing a kind of kit bag of bits and pieces. She's got a scissors, she's got a tailor bit. And what I've got behind her is a big white soft box. So there's light, bit like, it's coming through a screen and lighting up the background. Now, to show you what this, in one of the, and then I've got another light coming onto her. This is one where the softbox didn't go off. And this actually creates a totally different feel. And this is kind of why I chose these photos. These two photos were taken seconds apart. In both of them, the front flash went off. In this one, the flash behind that screen didn't go off. And in this one, it did. And apart from a sort of very slight wobble of the camera, you can see the expression is exactly the same, the pose is exactly the same, and the mood is totally different. And that, I think, is really kind of starting to get you. So if we take this one and open this with Photoshop, if I was to take this and make it black and white, and then take the gradient map, not gradient map, sorry, wasn't what I meant to do, curves, and sort of drop it down a bit. You know, you could create that sort of starts to become quite moody. You know, you can kind of create quite a dark moodiness out of this. Whereas, if I take this one and open it in Photoshop, and then do the same thing, convert it to, gradient map, so it's black and white, but then use the curves or the levels to brighten everything up a bit, you can see we now have quite a different kind of feel. If I, again, quickly just into Camera Raw, gives me slightly more options to play with. Can brighten it up, maybe bring up the whites, take down the highlights a little bit, play a little bit with clarity, texture. Even make that brighter, something like that. And you can see it's got a very, very different feel. So whereas this is sort of becoming quite low-key photography, this is kind of high-key photography. Again, it's not an ideal one, I think, because she's wearing a dark top. If I was aiming for full high-key photography, maybe we'd have had her wearing a lighter top as well. I think where it works best is where it's much more a punctuation of tone. And this is really, to be honest, this is what Lucas has done so well with this photo, is it's all surrounded in white, but he's not over whitened the skin. We've still got the texture in the skin. The skin is still darker than the white surround. So you've captured that really well. And we've got the shadow of the neck here. We can see the edge of the t-shirt, so we know the t-shirt's there, but it's just sort of drifted off into the white because it's not important. The texture of the hair is lovely. I like the oval shape that you've got in it. But where it's working is because it's primarily light, and then it's punctuated. You know, his eyes and those beautiful eyelashes, that children sometimes say really long eyelashes, and the dark, these eyes just stand out against the background really powerfully. And then we've got the texture of the eyebrows and the texture of the hair, the little chin that you have on small boys and or small children, and it's a beautiful photo. Really is a beautiful photo. I mean, it would be interesting again what if he was to sort of suddenly look up at the camera, you know, maybe head in the same shape. But I think there was another bit where you were sort of chatting in the comments about the fact that the problem of taking a photo of a child at all is they very rarely sit still. So to be able to capture that was pretty amazing. You know, as it goes, I think it's a lovely photo. I think it's a photo you could be very pleased with. Unlike the one that you had last week with Joas, can't remember his name. So anyway, where you didn't feel like you'd left enough room underneath, and it sort of felt a bit kind of pushed up. I think the shape of this is much better. You've got the room to breathe there, and the fact that he's not flat on, but he's diagonal. The eyes are at a diagonal and the hair's at a diagonal. I think these all work really well together. I don't think there's anything I can do to improve on that. I think you've got what you wanted, but hopefully it's just a case of if you've sort of done this by accident and weren't really sure what high key was, hopefully my explanation has made it a little bit clearer. High key is this idea of the light, but it works best when you've got the punctuation of the darkness. It's much more like graphic design, really. I mean, you know, it is photography. Is by its nature, photography is automatically abstract. You have abstracted something from reality and created a two-dimensional version of it. People tend to think photography reflects reality. It doesn't. It's already abstract. And then when you go black and white, you're abstracting again. You are removing a whole range of sense and sensory input by removing the colour. And then by shoving everything up into the white, you remove even more, because you're removing texture and you removed background. So you're abstracting, each layer is becoming abstracting further and further. And at this point, you really does sort of end up much more like graphic design. And it's art, you know, it's not, it is, I think somebody even commented in, you know, it looks quite like a drawing, and you can quite easily imagine somebody doing a pencil drawing, not dissimilar to that. But hopefully, though, Luke, that helps you get a better understanding of what high key is if you didn't already. And I think this is a perfect example of it. So if you want to do more of this, you're going along the right lines. Right. Okay, so thank you very much for sending that one in, Lucas. Much appreciated. So I think what we're going to just to kind of pull together now at the end, we did the mince pie photography coming up for Christmas. Actually, let's just double check in a couple more comments. Yeah, I should maybe come in on the comments first. Where do we go? Still talking about lenses. Ursula expressing surprise at Steve being here. Ursula and I both know Steve from days before on another photography website that we all used to hang around on. All right, Robert was able to continue on his mobile. Right, VG saying, amazed to see people so very creative. It looks like a painting. Stacey likes the high key. Ursula says, people used to hand colour high key black and white photos. Just a little, lips, eyes, a bit of the skin, and that gave it yet another feel. Yes, it would. I can imagine that. I mean, I have seen some, you know, you can do high key colour photography as well. and again, you're playing with other ideas with that point. And I think, yes, I mean, if you, I'm slightly wary about the idea of selective color, where say everything's in black and white, but just the lips are in red, or something like that. It's an effect that's been done to death, and it's one of those where it's too much about the effect and not enough about the actual overall image. You get distracted by the fact that it's a trick, really. But done properly, yeah, maybe a little bit of colour in the face and things like that. You can play around with that. So yes, but it's still whether it's accent in tone or it's accent in colour. It's about that idea of accent rather than specifically. You just don't have the full range. In a normal photo, you go from, like Robert's photo, you've got light sky, you've got dark car, you've got brighter leaves, you've got darker pavement, you've got full ranges going on. With low key, it's predominantly dark with accents of light, and with high key, it's predominantly light with accents of dark, but you can have accents of colour too. So yeah, thanks for that, Ursula. Mandy, beautiful photo. VG, I was wondering about the technique behind high key. Thanks for explaining that. I'm glad that was helpful then. Rosie thinks it's a gorgeous photo, and Lucas says thank you, and Lucas says thank you. I'll practice. All right, cool. Okay. So next week, we're between Christmas and New Year, Twixtimus. So I don't know. We're on a holiday. I don't have to be quite as serious as if I'm really being serious. I thought maybe try. The thing is, this is my first year of doing these podcasts. I've not done full year before. I suppose traditionally at this time of year, it's like if you watch television, everybody starts doing the year. Once you get past Christmas Day, it then becomes a reflecting back on what 2020 was like. Now, obviously, it's been a year unlike any other for all of us. But photography-wise, I thought what we could do is send me your favourite photo. What's the photo that you've taken this past year, since in 2020, that you love the most? Send me that. If you're on Facebook and you're part of the Facebook group, join the group, submit it. And if you're not on Facebook and you're watching it on YouTube, email me the message. If you're not sure about my email, leave a comment in the YouTube comments. But I'm easy enough to find. Email me your image, and just one. Don't send me 400. Pick out your favourite photo. Now I know it will always be a bit difficult, or a favourite photo, and tell me the story behind it. What is it about that photo that you love? Was it the circumstances? Was it the emotion, the mood was it something you captured that you weren't expecting to capture? Was it a new technique you tried out that was beautifully successful, much more than you thought it was? Find your best photo. Find the photo that you are happiest with for whatever reason. And next week, what we will do is I'll go through the photos. We'll use it to inspire each other, a bit like a challenge. I'm not doing like a full challenge kind of thing, because it's not like set up a photo, go away and make this photo for next week. It's what I want you to do is I want you to reflect back on 2020 and pick out a photo. Tell me the story behind it. And then next week I'll go through, depending on how many I get, we can have some fun looking at the photos. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. Oh, got Maggie coming in. Brilliant. Well, Mince Pie Photography, I now have a mince pie. Oh my god, that's good. Right, well, happy Christmas, everyone. Hope you have a good one. Enjoy your festivities, whether it's Christmas, whether it's Hanukkah, whether it's Midwinter Festival, whether you're not celebrating any of it, but just kind of enjoying the good stuff, the lovely films that come on TV. Excuse me, I'll try not to spray mince pie crumbs all over I hope you have a fun time. Have a wonderful festival. Enjoy. I'll catch up with you next Tuesday. Send me your favourite photo and the story behind it. Take care, everyone. Merry Christmas. Cheerio. Now, which photo should I end up with? Well, okay, let's just end screen. That's what I need.